Ladies, gentlemen, and haradrim of all ages, we are 2 weeks past the start of Season 7, and over that time there's been an absolute roller coaster going on as far as which classes are strong, which ones are the strongest or the weakest, and just sort of the way that the community is reacting to these situations happening. A lot of this has had to do with bugs happening, which are being tackled quite quickly by the devs, sort of one at a time, but even if we ignore the bugged stuff, there's quite a fair bit of interesting stuff going on right now across the 6 classes in Diablo 4. The top class by far right now is Necromancer, and it's 99% based because of one build, being Bloodwave with the Kesami's Legacy unique pants, the title legendary aspect for extra blood waves every time you cast it, and the fast blood aspect, which makes you reduce the cooldown of it a significant amount based on picking up blood orbs that spawn when you use it. And the thing about the Bloodwave build for Necro is, despite being the best scaling build across any class in the entire game, capable of hitting the fastest clears of the highest pit tiers that we currently have, it's also extremely quick to actually get online in the endgame to begin with too, as you can use it as soon as you have the unique pants and at least an okay roll of the fast blood aspect, and it allows you to just shoot up in progress and farm speed in ways no other class is currently able to. That said, in a season where we have been repeatedly told that changes and fixes to minions were going to be a big deal, they've been completely overshadowed by just the ridiculous scaling allowed to Bloodwave through this new unique, and the way that the rank 5 upgrade works for the skill 2, and just the way that all of this stacks up damage on repeated use especially. That said, this build and the class have hit pit tier 150, which is the limit of challenge currently available in the game. There are 2 other classes that have also hit tier 150, though they've done it with slightly slower completion times. The faster of the 2 being Druid, and this is a core part of the class's strength this season because cataclysm builds are absolutely ridiculously strong. They take a bit of knowledge to actually get going in the first place, but really just slice through enemies like butter as you run around in most content in the game. And the thing is, as good as this build is, as relaxing as it is to use in a lot of content, it's based entirely around snapshotting as a concept, and every top Druid build is based around snapshotting buffs for the duration of an ability in at least some way, but Cataclysm even more so than that. In this way, while Druid's top end is second highest power of all classes, it's based on a very unhealthy state of the class, if left as is long term, which I think is important to point out, and I will also point it out when it's relevant to other classes we'll talk about too. That said, even with the fact that Druid relies on a lot of snapshotting, if you just say that that's okay, if you decide that's a fine thing to have in the game, then Druid does actually have multiple different builds that are at least within a stone's throw of distance from each other. Even if Cataclysm itself is just way out in front, there are a few different builds that are in a pretty good spot for the class too, so it's not bad in that sense. Then in third place, with its tier 150 pit clear being done with only 2 seconds left on the timer, is Barbarian. Mostly through Earthquake builds, and Earthquakes have been absolutely popping off this season with multiple variations of Earthquake builds, from Whirlwind Earthquake for earlier game setups, and then more pure Earthquake with a little bit of Hammer of the Ancients mixed in for pit pushing, with a high focus on Wrath of Berserker, because the very top end at least is based entirely on a bug, as the Shroud of False Death mythic unique chest piece is giving bonus damage to the unconstrained key passive for Barbarian, which is absolutely not an intended interaction. It's supposed to give you 1 bonus rank of every passive, but not key passives. But even though it's not supposed to do that, it does add 35% multiplicative damage to Berserking through this, which then gets doubled by Wrath of the Berserker being permanently active. So basically this is 70% multiplicative bonus damage that just shouldn't exist to begin with. But even so, even if we drop that, Barbarian's top end with an Earthquake build is still very high and competitive with the other classes, if not quite tier 150 level. While Earthquake does have some variety within it, there are different builds that you can build around the concept like the classes before. This Barbarian is also heavily locked into one sort of playstyle if you care about scaling to deep endgame with increasingly powerful equipment at the center of it. This isn't necessarily a bad thing in itself, so much as it is a good thing if that's not the case, as it is for some other classes, as multiple equivalently powerful builds is the marker of a class that is balanced within itself, even if not compared to the other classes. That's it. Next up, we have the 4th highest pit tier completion by a class this season, which is Sorcerers at tier 136 at the moment, through an Inferno build, taking advantage of basically no cooldown on the ultimate and combining that burning damage with greater fireball for massive damage stacking on enemies, and then very sadly combining that with the Shatter key passive, which makes enemies explode when they become unfrozen after being frozen, for a good portion of the damage they took while they were frozen. And this, for whatever reason, just has the really silly interactions with greater fireball that cause Shatter itself to skyrocket significantly and be at the core of all high put pushing Sorcerer setups at the moment. That said, Firebolt Firewall still totally works, as is the more classic Fireball Shatter, and then outside of Pit, you've got Lightning Spear as a top dog with some other contenders, at least within fighting range, if not quite at the same level of viability ability, so Sorcerer is in a very interesting position where it is one of the lower performers overall, bottom 50%, but far more balanced within the class itself, especially if you account for Shatter only really functioning for pit pushing build and try not to count that for the other builds that it is a part of. To put it simply, without Shatter shenanigans, Sorc would actually probably be either near last or fully in last for overall power from pit pushing, but that also means that if we didn't count Shatter, the class as a whole is quite balanced inside of itself between its different builds, a lot of similar performance, which means that we're hopefully poised to at some point just get like a full rework to what Shatter does, completely combined with a boost to a bunch of base numbers for Sorcerer as a whole to just raise the overall bar of the class just a little bit. Then second to last as far as pit completion tier is Rogue, whose highest completion as of making this video is tier 135, just one below Sorcerer. This is being done with Rain of Arrows, and Rogue is in a really sort of odd position right now because before this season it's sort of been the class with the best example of multiple different extremely strong builds, all with similar power levels to each other. It's been near the top of the barrel in pretty much every season, but with a ton of variety of options that can reach that place or at least quite near to it, which is exactly where you want a class to be. Right now, however, it's pretty much all about Rain of Arrows as an ultimate skill for Rogue builds, but that's due to an unexpected bug. Season 7, when going into it for Rogue, was being touted as the season of Shadow Clone. Shadow Clone has been reworked, it's been fixed, it now accounts for all of your damage, now includes your legendary aspects, your imbuements properly, and now should be fully functional enough that with the buffs that it got as well, it should be the anchor of a bunch of really strong core skill builds for the Rogue. But then when it shipped, Shadow Clone had a bunch of issues going on, which were essentially just stopping those builds from even getting started again to begin with. That said, as far as theory crafting goes, once Shadow Clone has the current problems properly fixed by the devs, Rogue should not only be even stronger than its top builds are right now, but it should share that strength across a lot of varied builds once more as well, like it used to in previous seasons. So Rogue is a class that I would say is only 1 or 2 steps away from being in a really solid place at the moment, despite its placement in these rankings. Then finally, in last place for pit completion is Spiritborn. The current top build for the class is unfortunately the old crit overpower quill volley build focused around the Rod of Kapaleke unique and the Banished Lord's Talisman as well, and this is hitting like a tier 116 pit completion right now as the highest completed for the class. And I feel like it shows at least some of the issues with Spiritborn as far as balance. The way that a lot of the skill tree is designed for the class, it's just hard for Spiritborn to do an ultimate skill focused build, even with the season 7 changes for all of the classes focused around ultimates, and then because of the way that damage boosts work for the various skills Spiritborn has, nothing else can keep up with the guaranteed overpower and critical hits of the Kapaleke and Banished Lords combo, with Quill Volley being the best vehicle for that synergy for the class currently. That said, this season the build hit a wall at tier 116, but the second the bug was found last week with the Decay Augmentation, Witch Power, a lot of classes had people who took advantage of that to smash up and into tier 150 pits, including Sorcerer as well, which did 150s during this bug period, but Spiritborn became by far the fastest pit clear while this bug was active, faster than every other class, going from the lowest performing class in pit to the highest performing one off of a singular bug popping up and affecting it more than anything else. And that's sort of what Spiritborn feels like right now. There's a lot of good gameplay ideas in there, there's some awkwardness around the ultimate skills, as well as making any build that doesn't use basic skills or core skills just because the start of the skill tree has no generally applicable passives like the other classes have, and the actually outward performance of the top setups basically just need one singular bug showing up anywhere to scale up to the moon and do insane damage out of nowhere. Its first season, this class was fully on top of any other class by a mile, and in its second season it is at the bottom of the rankings by quite a fair margin. So hopefully season 8 will be the sort of Goldilocks moment for Spiritborn where it winds up just right somewhere around the middle. That just about does it for today then, everyone. Just a discussion about how each class is doing right now, how they currently rank against each other, why the order is what it is, any thoughts about the class within itself and its balance without comparing to other classes, and just whether they are in a good place or need some changes and where I could see that having the most impact. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.